10 years. That's how long Blake Cunningham waited to orchestrate the perfect humiliation. The golden boy who ruled high school had sent out reunion invitations with one specific target in mind: the single dad loser he'd tormented at his lowest point. But when a silver Rolls Royce Phantom pulled up to that hotel conference room and Owen Mitchell stepped out with Billionaire CEO Valerie Sinclair on his arm, every mocking smile froze, every cruel laugh died in their throats. This is what happens when the universe decides to balance the scales. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The silver Rolls Royce Phantom glided to a stop outside the Grand View Hotel, its presence commanding attention through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the conference room. Inside, 60 people pretending not to stare suddenly forgot their conversations mid-sentence. Blake Cunningham's hand froze halfway to his bourbon glass. This wasn't in the script. Owen Mitchell was supposed to arrive in his beat-up truck, probably still wearing oil-stained clothes, ready to be the evening's entertainment. Blake had been telling stories all night. Owen counting change at the grocery store. Owen's car breaking down with his kid crying in the back seat. Owen picking up his daughter from daycare, covered in grease and shame. Remember when he tried to pay for gas with quarters? Blake had laughed just minutes earlier. The look on the cashier's face. His audience had chuckled obligingly, though some shifted uncomfortably. 10 years changes people, but Blake hadn't changed much. Still the same need to be the biggest personality in the room. Still the same habit of building himself up by tearing others down. The driver, dressed in a crisp black uniform, walked around to open the rear door.
Owen Mitchell stepped out first, but this wasn't the Owen that Blake remembered. This man stood tall in a charcoal suit that fit him like it was painted on, his shoulders back, his jaw clean-shaven. 4 years had passed since Blake last saw him, but Owen looked like he'd reversed time by a decade. Gone were the hollow cheeks and desperate eyes. This man looked powerful. Then she emerged. Valerie Sinclair took Owen's offered hand, unfolding from the car with the kind of grace that made everyone else look clumsy. Red dress, pearl earrings, and an aura that filled the space before she even entered it. Several people immediately pulled out their phones, fingers flying across screens. Holy, is that Valerie Sinclair, CEO of Sinclair Industries? The billionaire? What's she doing with Owen Mitchell? That can't be real. Maybe she's an escort. Dude, that's definitely her. I just Googled. She was on the cover of Fortune last month. They walked through the entrance together, Valerie's hand resting naturally in the crook of Owen's arm, both moving with the synchronized confidence of people who belong together. The crowd parted instinctively. Blake's mind raced. This had to be a joke. Maybe Owen hired an actress. Maybe this was some elaborate revenge fantasy. But the way Valerie looked at Owen, soft, genuine, intimate, that couldn't be faked. And the way Owen moved, completely comfortable in his own skin, like he'd finally grown into the man he was always meant to be. Owen, Blake's voice came out higher than intended. You made it? Owen's eyes found Blake's across the room. No anger, no resentment, just a quiet acknowledgement, like spotting a familiar stranger. Hello, Blake. It's been a while. The reunion banner behind Blake seemed to mock him now. Welcome back, class of 2014. His family's dealership logo prominently displayed beneath it. He'd paid extra to make sure his name was everywhere tonight. Now it felt like a monument to his own stupidity. 3 weeks earlier, Owen had been underneath a 2018 Honda Civic, oil dripping dangerously close to his eye, when he heard the bell above his shop door chime. "Be right with you," he called out, sliding out from under the car. But it wasn't a customer. It was Hannah, his 6-year-old daughter, holding a cream-colored envelope she'd grabbed from their mailbox. Her small face was scrunched in concentration as she tried to read the formal script on the front. "Daddy, someone sent you a fancy letter." Owen wiped his hands on the rag that perpetually hung from his pocket, leaving new grease stains on fabric that had seen better days. The return address made his stomach tighten. Blake Cunningham. Inside, the invitation was exactly what he expected. High school reunion, 10 years. But Blake had added a personal note in his unnecessarily perfect handwriting. Really hope you can make it, Owen. Would love to catch up and see how you're doing these days. I'm sure everyone would enjoy hearing about your journey. Owen knew that tone. Even in writing, Blake's condescension dripped through. The ellipses before journey might as well have been a wink and a nudge. Come be our entertainment, it said. Come let us see how far you haven't climbed. What does it say, Daddy? Hannah asked, climbing onto his workbench, her little legs swinging. Just an invitation to a party with people Daddy went to school with. Are they your friends? Owen thought about how to answer that. Not really, sweetheart. Then why do they want you to come? The innocence of the question hit harder than Blake's cruelty ever could. Owen kissed the top of Hannah's head, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. Sometimes people invite you to things for the wrong reasons, baby. Like when Melissa invited me to her birthday just so I would bring the good presents? Owen smiled despite himself. His daughter was too smart for 6. Exactly like that. He was about to toss it in the trash when the door chimed again. Valerie Sinclair walked in like she always did. Designer heels somehow navigating his oil-stained floors. Tablet in one hand, coffee in the other. They'd been doing this for 6 months now. She'd stop by after board meetings, and they'd talk about the automotive division, about innovations, about life. Somewhere along the way, the meetings had become the highlight of his week. Valerie! Hannah jumped down from the bench and ran to her. Valerie set down her coffee just in time to catch Hannah's hug. Hello, my favorite assistant. Are you helping Daddy today? I'm organizing the wrenches by size, Hannah announced proudly. Critical work. I don't know what he'd do without you. You look like someone just asked you to solve world hunger, she said to Owen, noticing his expression. Owen handed her the invitation, watched her read it, watched her jaw tighten. This is from that Blake person? The one who... Yeah. Owen turned back to his tools, organizing them unnecessarily. Doesn't matter. I'm not going. Valerie set down her coffee with deliberate precision. When is it? 3 weeks, but I said I'm not. You're going. Owen looked up, surprised by the steel in her voice. And I'm going with you. Valerie, you don't have to. Hannah, sweetheart, why don't you go color in the office? I saw Daddy got you new markers. Hannah looked between them with 2 knowing eyes, but skipped off to the office. Once she was gone, Valerie stepped closer. How many times did this Blake humiliate you when you were struggling? It doesn't matter. How many times, Owen? Owen was quiet. I stopped counting after 20. And he's inviting you now to do it again, to parade you around like some cautionary tale, which is why I'm not going. No, you're going, we're going, and we're going to show them exactly who Owen Mitchell really is. Valerie, I don't need to prove anything to them. She moved closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume mixing with the motor oil and metal of his shop. You're right, you don't need to prove anything. But Hannah's getting older. Soon she'll go to school with kids whose parents were at that reunion. What story do you want them telling? Back in the conference room, Blake had recovered enough to approach them, his entourage trailing behind like lost puppies. The same guys who used to laugh at his jokes about Owen, who'd helped spread the rumors, who'd made bets on how long Owen would last as a single dad. Marcus was there, the guy who'd posted photos of Owen at his worst on Instagram with crying, laughing emojis. Jennifer Walsh, who'd started the rumor that Owen probably couldn't even afford daycare and just left Hannah in the shop. Tommy Brooks, who'd made jokes about Owen's wife probably leaving him before realizing she'd died. Valerie Sinclair, Blake extended his hand, trying to reclaim control. I'm Blake Cunningham. I own Cunningham Automotive Group, 6 dealerships across the state. Valerie looked at his hand for a moment before taking it briefly. I know who you are. The temperature in her voice could have frozen mercury. Blake's hand dropped. So, Owen, Blake pivoted, desperate to regain footing. What exactly do you do now? Last I heard, you were still at that little garage. I still own the garage, Owen said simply. Mitchell and Daughter Auto Repair. And I consult for Sinclair Industries. Consult? Blake's laugh was forced. That's great, buddy. What kind of consulting can a mechanic? He runs my entire automotive engineering division. Valerie's voice cut through the room like a blade. He's also the reason my company exists today. The silence that followed was suffocating. Marcus dropped his drink. It shattered on the floor, bourbon spreading across Italian marble like spilled secrets. Wait, Jennifer Walls stepped forward, her voice shaking. You're saying Owen, our Owen, runs a division at a billion-dollar company? 1.8 billion, actually. Our last valuation was 3 months ago. Owen's innovations in our electric vehicle sector alone increased our market cap by 400 million.
4 years ago, the night of the blizzard. Owen almost didn't stop. It was past midnight, visibility near zero, his own truck fighting against the wind. The temperature had dropped to -15, the kind of cold that hurt to breathe. Hannah was safe at home with Mrs. Glory from next door, but he needed to get back. The gas station had called him in for an emergency repair, and the $50 he'd made would cover formula for the week. His truck heater was barely working, another thing he couldn't afford to fix. His fingers were already numb through his work gloves, and he'd been awake for 19 hours straight. First shift at the garage, second shift at the gas station, and this emergency call-out. But there was something about the way the hazard lights blinked through the snow, desperate, rhythmic, like a heartbeat giving out. He pulled over. The woman inside was crying, her breath fogging the windows. Expensive coat, diamond earrings, but her face was raw with fear. Her lips had a bluish tinge that Owen recognized, the beginning of hypothermia. "Please, help me," she said when he tapped on the window, her voice barely audible through chattering teeth. "I've been here 2 hours. My phone's dead. I thought I was going to die out here." Owen saw the designer briefcase in her back seat, papers scattered across it. Even in crisis, she'd been trying to work. "Pop the hood. I'll take a look." "I called 3 tow trucks. No one would come out in this weather." "Well, I'm here now." Owen didn't mention that his hands were already numb, that he'd been working since 5 a.m., that his own truck might not make it home. He just got to work. The problem was immediately apparent to most, a dead battery, but when Owen tried to jump it, nothing. He crawled under the car, snow soaking through his already damp jacket. There, a corroded ground connection complicated by a computer malfunction that the cold had triggered. 45 minutes. That's how long it took, lying on his back in snow that soaked through his jacket, ice forming on his eyelashes. His hands stopped feeling anything after the first 10 minutes. He had to take breaks every few minutes to warm his fingers against the engine block. The pain of returning sensation made him bite his tongue. At one point, Valerie got out of the car. "Please, come warm up inside. You're going to get frostbite." "Almost got it," Owen managed through chattering teeth. "Just need another minute." It took 15 more minutes, but when the engine roared to life, the woman looked at him like he'd performed a miracle. "How much do I owe you?" Owen's whole body was shaking now. He could barely speak through the shivers. "Nothing. Just get somewhere warm. Please, you might have saved my life. Let me pay you." Owen thought of Hannah, asleep in her crib, of Rachel, gone 15 months now, of the empty side of the bed that still felt wrong, of the formula he needed, the rent coming due, the electricity bill already 2 months behind. "I have a daughter," he said quietly, forcing his frozen face to form words. "If she was stuck out here someday, I'd want someone to help her. That's all. Just pay it forward when you can." "What's your name?" "Owen. Owen Mitchell." "I'm Valerie. Valerie Sinclair." She pulled out a business card, scribbled something on the back with shaking hands. "This is my personal number. If you ever need anything, you call me." Owen took the card to be polite, shoved it in his pocket, and forgot about it. He had formula to buy, bills to pay, a daughter to raise. He didn't have time for anything else. What he didn't know was that Valerie sat in her car for 20 minutes after he left, crying. Not from fear anymore, but from something else. The kindness of a stranger who clearly had nothing, giving everything, asking for nothing in return. She made a decision that night. If that man could show that kind of strength, that kind of selflessness while obviously struggling himself, then she could fight harder too. She wouldn't sell her father's company. She'd save it. The reunion crowd had formed a circle now, everyone pretending not to eavesdrop while obviously eavesdropping.
Phones were out, recording. Someone whispered, "This is going on TikTok." Blake tried one more time. "So, how did you two meet?" Valerie stepped forward, and somehow everyone leaned in. "4 years ago, I was driving back from the worst meeting of my life. My father had just died, leaving me a company drowning in debt. The board wanted me to sell. I was ready to give up on everything he'd built. Then my car died in the middle of the worst blizzard Minnesota had seen in 20 years. She paused, her hand finding Owen's. "I sat there for 2 hours. No help coming. Phone dead. The temperature was -15. I was hypothermic, terrified, ready to just let go. Then headlights appeared through the snow. This man," she looked at Owen, "spent 45 minutes in that blizzard fixing my car. He was clearly exhausted, clearly struggling himself. His own jacket was held together with duct tape. His gloves had holes, but he wouldn't take a penny. He just said he had a daughter, and he'd want someone to help her if she was stuck." The room was silent now. Even Blake had stopped fidgeting. "I found out later that Owen had been working 3 jobs, that his wife had died just 15 months earlier when a construction crane malfunctioned and dropped steel beams on her car, that he was raising a baby alone, choosing between formula and electricity bills. The $50 he'd made that night fixing someone else's emergency, that was his formula money for the week. And he still stopped to help a stranger." Jennifer Walsh had tears running down her face. She'd been one of the cruelest, spreading rumors that Owen was probably neglecting Hannah, that someone should call child services. "That night, I was ready to give up on everything. But if a stranger could show that kind of determination, that kind of selflessness while fighting his own battles, then I could fight harder too. I restructured everything, pivoted the company. 3 years later, Sinclair Industries was worth $1.2 billion. She turned to face Blake directly. "I searched for Owen for 3 years. 3 years. The business card I gave him, he never called. Not once. Even when his electricity was shut off. Even when he was eating 1 meal a day so Hannah could have 3. He never called the billionaire CEO who owed him everything." Blake's face had gone gray. "When I finally found him, he'd built his own successful business while raising an incredible daughter alone. He'd been through hell, lost his wife in an accident, endured mockery from people who should have helped him, worked himself nearly to death, but he never let it make him cruel, never let it break who he was." Her voice dropped. But in the silence, everyone heard her. "You invited him here to mock him, didn't you? To laugh at the single dad who struggled while you sat comfortable in daddy's business? But here's what you never understood about Owen Mitchell. He was never a loser. He was just a late bloomer. And some flowers, when they finally bloom, put everything else in the garden to shame. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone's entire worldview crumbles? Share in the comments if you've seen karma deliver justice this perfectly." Owen finally spoke, his voice calm. "Blake, I didn't come here to make you feel bad. I came because my daughter thought I should. Because she should know her father doesn't hide from his past, even the painful parts." He looked around the room, making eye contact with several people who'd been particularly cruel back then. "We all have our struggles. Mine were just more visible than most. Rachel died when Hannah was 18 months old. A construction accident. Steel beams from a crane fell on her car. And yeah, I struggled. I was 25, suddenly alone with a baby, drowning in bills, working myself to death. But I never used my circumstances as an excuse to be cruel."
Someone gasped. Most hadn't known about Rachel's death, just that Owen was a single dad. "Blake, you showed up at my lowest moments. The grocery store when I was counting change for diapers. The parking lot when my car broke down with Hannah crying. Every time you had something to say. A joke, a jab, a reminder of my place." Blake's face had gone pale. He remembered those moments differently now, not as funny anecdotes, but as cruelty toward a grieving widower. Remember the grocery store? Owen continued, his voice steady. I had $37 to last 2 weeks. Hannah needed diapers, I needed formula. I was standing there doing math, figuring out if I could make it work. You took a photo, posted it online, as Owen Mitchell counting change like a homeless person. It got 200 likes. Marcus looked like he might be sick. He'd been the first to share that photo. But here's the thing. Every night when I wanted to give up, Hannah would smile at me in the morning. And that was enough. It had to be enough. So I kept going. Fixed cars and driveways for extra cash. Slept 4 hours a night. Built my shop one customer at a time. Owen took a breath. When Hannah was 3, she asked me why I was always tired. I told her I was building something. She asked what? I said a future where she'd never have to count change for diapers. She said, "Daddy, I don't need a future. I just need you." That's when I realized I'd been so focused on surviving that I'd forgotten to live. Valerie squeezed his hand. I'm not here to shame anyone. We were all young. We all did things we probably regret. But if there's something I learned from losing Rachel, from raising Hannah alone, from that night in the blizzard, it's that kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. He turned to Valerie. We should go. Hannah's waiting at home. As they walked toward the door, Blake found his voice. Owen, wait. Owen paused but didn't turn. I'm sorry. For all of it. I was cruel. I was wrong. You didn't deserve any of that.
Owen turned then, and for the first time all night, he smiled genuinely. I appreciate that, Blake. Really. We all have moments we're not proud of. Just do better going forward. How? Blake's voice cracked. How do you forgive people who kicked you when you were down? Owen thought for a moment. Because holding on to anger is exhausting, and I was already too tired. Besides, you didn't make me struggle. Life did that. You just made it lonelier. But loneliness taught me to appreciate real connection when I found it. In the Rolls Royce, Valerie was quiet for a moment before speaking. You know, you could have destroyed him in there. Part of me wanted you to. What would be the point? Owen watched the city lights blur past. Besides, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Rachel taught me that. Rachel sounds like she was amazing. She was. She would have liked you. She always said I needed someone who could match my stubbornness. Valerie studied his profile. I need to tell you something. Owen turned to her. These past 6 months, working with you, seeing you with Hannah, watching how you treat everyone from janitors to board members with the same respect, I've been falling for you. I tried to keep it professional, but Valerie, I need to tell you something too. She waited. That night, after you drove away in the blizzard, I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, just trying to warm up. My heater was broken, I couldn't feel my hands, and I had $8 in my wallet. And I thought about the way you said thank you, the way you looked at me like I was worth something when everyone else saw failure. I've thought about it every day since.
You have? When you walked into my shop 6 months ago, I thought I was hallucinating. The woman from the blizzard, standing in my garage. And every meeting since, every conversation, every time you laugh at Hannah's jokes, I've been falling too. I just thought, a billionaire CEO and a mechanic. Stop. Valerie took his hand. You're not just a mechanic. You're Owen Mitchell, the man who saves strangers in blizzards, the father who'd work himself to death for his daughter, the genius who solved the engineering problem that saved my company $8 million, the kindest soul I've ever met. That engineering solution was just common sense. No, it was genius. MIT couldn't solve it. Stanford couldn't solve it. But you looked at it for 20 minutes and saw what everyone else missed. Owen squeezed his hand. So what do we do now? Now we go home to Hannah. Tell her about tonight, and tomorrow we see where this goes. I'd like that. Owen,
Yeah? That personal note Blake wrote on your invitation? I saw it. He wanted you there as entertainment, to make himself feel bigger. I know. Then why did you really come? Owen was quiet for a moment. Because Hannah's getting older. Soon she'll hear stories about her dad, about how people saw me when things were hard. I wanted to show her, and maybe myself, that we don't have to hide from our past, that sometimes the best revenge is just becoming who you were meant to be. And who were you meant to be? Hers, Hannah's dad. Everything else, the shop, the consulting, you, that's all bonus. But being her dad, that's who I am. Valerie leaned over and kissed his cheek. She's lucky to have you. We're lucky to have you.
When they got home, Hannah was waiting in her pajamas, Mrs. Glory reading her a story on the couch. "Daddy, Valerie, how was the party?" Owen scooped her up. "It was interesting, baby." "Did the mean people say sorry?" Owen and Valerie exchanged glances. Sometimes Hannah's perception was unsettling. Some of them did, yeah. "Good. Valerie, are you staying for hot chocolate?" "If that's okay with your dad." "Please, Daddy." Owen looked at his daughter's hopeful face, then at Valerie's matching expression. "How can I say no to my two favorite girls?" As Mrs. Glory left and they made hot chocolate together, Hannah suddenly said, "Daddy, Sarah at school said you're poor, and that's why Mom doesn't live with us." The kitchen went quiet. Owen knelt down to Hannah's level. "Baby, Mom died in an accident when you were little. It had nothing to do with money. And we're not poor. We have everything we need." "I know Mom died, Daddy. I told Sarah that. But she said poor people can't be happy." Valerie knelt down too. "Hannah, can I tell you a secret?" Hannah nodded. "I have more money than I could ever spend. Big house, fancy cars, everything. But you know when I'm happiest? When? Right now. Here, with you and your dad making hot chocolate in a kitchen that smells like cinnamon. Because happiness isn't about what you have. It's about who you have." Hannah considered this. "So we're rich?" Owen pulled her close. "The richest, baby. The absolute richest." 6 months later. The wedding was small by billionaire standards, only 200 guests at the Sinclair estate, but Owen had insisted on a few things. Hannah would be the flower girl, Mrs. Glory from next door would sit in the front row, and every employee from Mitchell & Daughter Auto Repair would be invited.
Blake Cunningham almost didn't come. The invitation felt like salt in a wound he'd inflicted on himself. But his wife, pregnant with their first child, convinced him. "You need to go," she said. "You need to see that your past doesn't define your future. Neither does his." So Blake went. He watched Owen at the altar, watched Valerie walk down the aisle, watched Hannah beam with pride as she scattered rose petals. During the father-daughter dance, when Owen spun Hannah around and she laughed so hard she snorted, Blake felt something shift in his chest. The song was Butterfly Fly Away, Hannah's choice. Owen had practiced for weeks, his work boots learning to waltz. When Hannah stepped on his feet on purpose so he'd lift her up and spin her like when she was smaller, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. "I love you, Daddy," Hannah said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I love you too, baby. Always." After the dance, Blake approached Owen at the bar. "Beautiful wedding," he said. "Thanks for coming, Blake. I know it couldn't have been easy. I needed to be here, to see this, to understand." "To understand what?" Blake gestured around the room, at Valerie talking to Hannah, at the employees from Owen's shop laughing with Fortune 500 CEOs, at the joy that seemed to radiate from every corner. That success isn't about putting others down to lift yourself up. It's about, Blake struggled for words, it's about this, building something real,
being someone people actually want to stand beside. Owen handed Blake a beer. We all figure it out at different speeds. The important thing is that we figure it out. They clinked bottles.
Your daughter's beautiful, Blake said. Hannah, right? Yeah, she's my world. I'm going to have a son in 3 months. Congratulations. Any advice? Owen thought for a moment. Love them when they're difficult. Be there when it's inconvenient. And remember that they're always watching, always learning from who you are, not who you pretend to be. Blake nodded, filing it away. Also, Owen added, when they're teenagers, and they hate you, and they will, remember that they're not really hating you. They're hating the fact that they need you. Be patient. Keep showing up. They come back. How do you know? Hannah's only 6. Because I hated my dad when I was 16. He worked 3 jobs, never missed a game, and I resented him for being tired. He died when I was 20. I'd give anything for one more day to tell him I understand now. Blake was quiet. Then, my dad owns the dealerships. Gave them to me. I've never actually earned anything. You're earning it now, Owen said simply. Being here, apologizing, trying to be better for your son, that's earning it. As the night wound down, Owen found himself on the balcony with Valerie and Hannah. The stars were out, unusually clear for the city. Daddy, is this our happily ever after? Owen looked at his daughter, then at his wife, then back at the stars. No, baby. This is our happily ever now. After comes later. Now is what we've got. I like now, Hannah decided. Me too, Valerie said, leaning into Owen's shoulder. Know what I like most? Hannah asked. What's that? That you kept your promise. What promise? The one you made when I was 3, about building a future. You did it, Daddy. You built it.
Owen's eyes filled. We built it, baby. All 3 of us. Down in the parking lot, Blake sat in his car for a moment before driving home. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and found a name he hadn't called in years. His little brother, the one he'd mocked for becoming a teacher instead of joining the family business. Hey, Tommy, it's Blake. I know it's late, but I wanted to apologize for everything. And maybe we could grab coffee sometime. I'd like to hear about your kids. And maybe get some advice. I'm going to be a dad soon, and I want to do it right. Sometimes redemption comes in grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in small moments of choosing to be better. Sometimes it comes from watching someone you tried to break become unbreakable and realizing the only person you were really breaking was yourself. 5 years after the wedding, Hannah Mitchell Sinclair, now 16, stood at a podium giving a speech at her high school's anti-bullying assembly. Her parents sat in the front row, Owen in his usual jeans and polo, Valerie in a simple dress, their 3-year-old son Thomas asleep in Owen's arms. My dad taught me something important. He said the people who try to make you feel small are usually the ones who feel smallest. He would know. When I was a baby and my birth mom died, people made fun of him for struggling, for being poor, for being alone. But he just kept being kind. He kept helping people. And you know what? She looked directly at a group of kids who'd been giving her friend a hard time. Kindness compounds interest better than any investment. One night, my dad helped a stranger in a snowstorm. That stranger became my mom. Not my birth mom, but the mom who chose me, who loves me, who showed me that family isn't just about blood. That single act of kindness didn't just change his life, it created mine. It gave me a family. It gave me possibilities I never would have had. She paused. So when someone tries to make you feel like you're not enough, remember this. Flowers bloom at different times, some in spring, some in summer, some even wait until fall. But the ones that bloom latest often bloom longest. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to others. You never know who's going to bloom into something beautiful.
In the audience, Owen wiped his eyes. Valerie grabbed his hand. Little Thomas stirred in Owen's arms, mumbling, "Daddy," in his sleep. And in the back row, Blake Cunningham, Now a school board member who'd spent years championing anti-bullying programs stood and started clapping. His own son, 5 years old, sat beside him. Blake had brought him to hear Hannah speak, to learn early that strength isn't about power, it's about lifting others up. Others joined the applause. Soon the entire auditorium was on its feet. Hannah found her parents' eyes in the crowd and smiled. Some stories end with revenge. The best ones end with redemption. The very best ones, they don't end at all. They just keep blooming, generation after generation, kindness after kindness, until you can't remember what the garden looked like before the flowers came. If this story reminded you that your past doesn't determine your future, that kindness always comes back around, then subscribe to Everbell's stories, because everyone deserves to know that their bloom is coming, even if it's taking its sweet time. Remember, success isn't about the car you drive or the title you hold. It's about the lives you touch, the dignity you maintain when life gets hard, and the grace you show to those who showed you none. Be someone's Owen. Stop in the blizzard. Fix what's broken. Expect nothing in return. You never know whose life you're about to change. You never know who might change yours.